Okay, so why don't we get started, folks? Okay, so we got a couple, at least one new person, a couple of people that maybe folks don't know, so we probably ought to do some just quick introduction who you are and who you're with, if you're with anybody. And then we'll do proxies and public observations. I don't see a lot of public, so we'll see what that is. So for those who are new here, my name is Pat Frost, and I attempt to facilitate meetings. And we'll, Scott's just about back to his chair, so we'll start there.
Scott Russell, Forest Supervisor, Shasta Trinity National Forest.
Ted MacArthur, Forest Supervisor, Six Rivers National Forest.
I don't know how you guys want to do this.
Charlie Powers, Ed River, Deputy District Ranger.
Good morning, Jennifer Mata, Field Manager, Running Yellow.
Susan Molyneux, community member.
Susan Bauer, community member, Safe Alternatives for Our Forest Environment.
Larry Glass, representing SAFE.
Arnold Goodrich, Cameron Brown, Trinity County Public Health.
Clarence Rose, representing Trinity Public Utility District.
Joe Casa, community member.
I'm Kelly Sheen, District Manager.
Sorry, Kelly.
District Manager of the Trinity County Resource Conservation District and part of the facilitation team also.
Bob Morris, Beaverville.
Joseph Bauer, Hay Fork Collaborative member.
Joe Smails, District Ranger, Trinity River Management Unit, Shasta Trinity.
Jerry Cousins, Weaverville Collaborative member.
Attempting to like impersonate a Forest Service person with his jacket.
Oh, is that all it takes?
Careful. That way, another time you could probably go on a detail somewhere.
Yeah.
Getting close to Halloween.
That's true.
Diane Richards, Hay Fork Collaborative. Diana Sheen, Weaverville, Public Watchdog.
Tom Waltz, Collaborative.
And Tom Hall, District Ranger for the South Fork Management Unit, also impersonating Forest Service.
So I've heard. Yeah.
Nice jacket.
So some obvious absences that wanted to be noted was that both Jeremy Brown and Judy Morris are at a, what is it?
North Coast Resource Partnership.
Meeting somewhere down on the coast. So that they both were absent and they didn't ask for any proxies.
And Pat, I just want to give a progress report on Dick Morris. Dick had hip replacement surgery on September 24th, and he's doing well. He's out and about and making a good recovery. So we're very grateful for that.
The newspaper machine still have newspapers in them. Anyway, so they're absent. Carol Fallen said she has a really bad cold, so decided not to come and share it with everybody and admonish me because she got it from me. So public observation. So anybody, do we have anybody just from the public that have anything they want to say at this point? I don't think we really do. Proxies that we got noticed on proxies was that Susan Bauer is the proxy for Sally Eldinger. Susan Molyneux is the proxy for Ross. Arnold is the proxy for Kenneth Baldwin.
So I got 2 votes.
They get extras, they get the front of the line with the snacks. Diana, you are gonna be the proxy for Terry,
Correct.
okay? Any other proxies that I think we missed because we were traveling?
So Paul Hooser asked me this morning if I would be his proxy.
Okay. Okay, and so from public health, just to kind of give you a little bit on kind of only one of the rules I seem to remember, which is that to be a voting member of the collaborative, you have to come 2 times in a row and be a listener and member of the public, and then you can kind of be a joint conversation. Okay. And do you have anything from the just from a public point of view, like a general, something from public health? getting here or anything, or
Sorry, from the public or public
from
health?
public health?
I guess I could just share my interest really briefly.
Sure.
I've been here for just a year and I came from Oregon. I was pretty fresh out of school. I was working with the Oregon Health and Outdoors Initiative, which is a bunch of land managers and health advocates, health professionals that were really trying to start a discussion about how green infrastructure, land management decisions affect community health. So
Okay.
that's just like a personal interest I have. So I asked my boss if I could come here and she said, yeah, it's great.
Cool.
We see it as a good public health kind of outlet, so.
Okay, great. Well, that's good, thank you. Are there any items that aren't on the agenda that are time sensitive that need to be added to the agenda? Anybody have anything that they know about? I had put in an email that there was the possibility of 2 items from, I think primarily from the NRA and the Trinity River Management Unit that were funding. They've submitted funding into the region for recreation-related things. The timing was such that anything that was gonna be a part of that, those requests had to be submitted on the 16th. And so for us to take action, to go to the Board of Supervisors, for them to take action, the staff at the Shasta Trinity didn't think it was timely or necessary, and so I did not add those to the agenda. Arnold?
I notice you don't have a item for a next time agenda.
Oh,
Is that
okay.
is that a new policy on your part, or?
No, it's probably a Pat using the new format on the thing, and it's probably on the page 2 that's still sitting on the printer somewhere. Okay, that's good, thank you, Arnold. Okay. Okay, with that, so the next thing I wanted to talk about, I know this is, not gonna be easy for everybody, but, we lost Dan Dill. And we thought that, we should spend a few minutes just kind of honoring him here as a very active member of our collaborative. And then, Kelly Sheen and Nick Goleta and I kind of came up with an idea that we want to kind of pass by you to potentially take to the Board of Supervisors. And to kind of get this started, I thought from collaborative members' point of view, certainly Dan worked most closely with the Fuel Break Work Group, and if for no other reason than geographic proximity, he probably turned to Larry Glass more often and first, more times than not. And so I asked Larry to just give us a few thoughts and reflections on Dan, and then open it up to the group to add whatever they want. I just thought, not to make this the whole meeting, but I just thought it would be nice for us to think about one of us.
Yeah, well, some of you maybe aren't up to speed on our relationship with Dan, but it was great, and it was sort of groundbreaking for a lot of us who've been locking horns with the Forest Service for 30, 40 years. It was a real refreshing change. And Pat's right, I just live up on the top of South Fork Mountain. Dan's just right down the hill from me, and so we ran into each other all the time and talked all the time and really developed a friendship over the period of time, before 5 years that we were working together with the collaborative. But, he was so important for translating our idea to reality on the ground. And I don't know that we'll ever be able to replace that ability, but because he came from timber, he also came from biology and wildlife, that nexus helped him, I think, to really understand where we were going with our concept for the roadside shaded fuel breaks. And we only had to explain it to him one time, and he had it. It was like when we came up with the idea out in the field, and Tom Waltz, wherever he went to. Oh, there you go. Tom Waltz is like, once again, he had it down so quick, so fast that we just always deferred to Tom. And we'd always say, well, Tom will explain it to everybody, because he just had it down. And Dan was the same way. He just told him one time and he had it down. There's so many things I could say about Dan, but one of the things I wanted to communicate the most to all of you was how much his staff in Mad River really, really loved him. He and I were out in the field in his Rubicon, which I see sitting out in the lot out there, and way up at the top of the 48 project, and his front tire blew out, just boom, you know. And so we pull over the side of the road and get out ready to change the tire on, you know, in this $high Rubicon. We look in the back, there's no spare and no tools. They had neglected to put that with the vehicle apparently. And Dan had never had a flat, so we didn't know that that stuff was missing. So there we are out in the middle of nowhere, and we barely had radio reception, but he put out a call saying, hey, I need somebody to run a spare tire up here because we got a flat and no spare. And within like about 20 minutes, here comes every fire truck, every Forest Service fire truck you can imagine from different directions, with all these guys wanting to help. They wouldn't let Dan anywhere near the vehicle. They lifted it up and changed the tire, and you know, they just had such reverence for him. And that's what I wanted to make sure that all of you knew, how much he was loved by his staff. And I sure enjoyed working with him and having him for a friend. When there was fires in our neck of the woods over there, Dan was first one on the scene and always sending me updates, you know, this is what's happening. He was a fireman at heart. That was his, I think, his first calling. When he used to work for Pacific Lumber, he was a volunteer with the Scotia Fire Department, and he made it to lieutenant as a volunteer in the Scotia Fire Department. And Arnold was there, and the Bowers were there, but there was a huge memorial for him that Ted says there was about 500 people at the memorial. I know the place was packed. It was unbelievable turnout of people showing their respect to Dan. So that's what I wanted.
Thank you, Larry.
So, open it up to anybody else, if anybody had anything else they wanted to add, if not, that's cool too. Diane.
So, I mean, I wish I had the same close relationship with him, didn't get to work with him in the field, but, you know, I used to tease him all the time, we need to clone you, we need to clone you, we need lots more of you, and I maybe thought it was crazy, but I think he knew how much appreciated he was by everybody here. And I don't know what you guys have cooked up, but I'll listen to it, but we need to do something more, you know, whether we name a project after him or a lookout, something permanent that we can remember him for all time. I hope that's what you've got cooked up.
Well, we'll get to the pot of stew on the back burner.
Can we get the frequency for roadside assistance?
Sorry, there is an ancillary message though, make sure you've got a spare tire.
Yeah, it's already on.
Tom, yeah, come on.
I just wanted to share a little bit. Dan had this unique, I think, ability to have a smile on his face and help other people smile. And the funniest part that I ever had with Dan is just before I retired, I was over down in Wildwood, and I was coming back. I was going to come back on 36 and come to pay for it. And it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, about that drowsy time after lunch. So I pulled over on Highway 36 in a wide spot and just kind of laid my head back. And all of a sudden I hear this rig pull up. So I kind of sit up, and it's Dan. And he said, it was typical Dan, he said, and that's why I loved working for private industry. He said, if I fall asleep in here, everybody in the world will know.
Anyone else, anything else? Clarence.
You know, one quality that I remember clearly, in addition to those that have been said, is Dan's confidence. And Dan was devoted to seeing good things happen on the ground. And he knew how to go through the entire process. And he wasn't timid about the process, and he was confident that he had people working for him that would help get that project done on the ground. And we all tuned into that right away. That was very attractive to a lot of us who have been in land management, and I think that's just a standout characteristic. His knowledge base, his experience, it doesn't hurt that you're, what was he, 6'7"? Or something, it doesn't hurt that helps your confidence too, I think. But he did, when he saw something good that needed to be done, he would start at A and he would go all the way to Z to get it done as expeditiously as he could, and that was a great call.
Susan?
And I second all the good things that have been said. And I would like to point out one other thing so dear to his heart, and right up there with the #1 projects were his daughters. And I was thinking, what could we do that would be especially something Dan would like us to do? And I would think to let his daughters know how much we appreciated him would be a very important thing. So, anyway, we have a card with Dan's picture on the back, and the forestry group gathered around, listening to the words. And so I would ask that you don't necessarily have to write anything. You would be welcome to, of course, there's some room. But if you would sign your name, and then Charlie has already committed to getting it to Ava and Emily, his daughters, his dear daughters.
Here, why don't we, as opposed to putting it,
Oh, that's a good idea. Thank you, yes. that makes sense.
One other,
pass it around?
I am, right this minute.
one other thing I wanted to mention too is that Ted recommended that we basically apply for nomination to the Regional Foresters Awards. Is that an annual awards?
It is.
Okay, so I put together the nomination basically, and it's for partnership of, there's a number of different awards, but the one that you had recommended was Partnership of the Year Award. So just to sort of recognize the work that Dan had done with this collaborative specifically, and so technically the nomination is for this collaborative. And I'm not sure, I didn't get a sense of when those awards were honored or given, or.
I don't remember when the ceremony, they haven't made the selections yet to my knowledge, but yeah, we did submit a nomination for the Trinity County Collaborative Group. It's a joint nomination between the Shasta and the Six Rivers, and highlighting Dan's key role in helping with partnership.
That award ceremony is an evening ceremony during our December regional leadership team, which I believe is the first full week in December. Okay. I can look at my calendar and kind of get a sense for what day
So
that might
before,
be.
yeah, so we would know that before the next collaborative meeting.
And if that award is selected, there would be the opportunity for some members of the collaborative to be there and accept that.
Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So my one reflection is that, is actually a Bowerman Barn kind of reflection with Dan, and it goes to his, his background in wildlife. And that is, we got all stressed out a couple of summers ago because a colony of Townsend long-eared bats took up residence in the Bowerman Barn in the summer. Not all bats. It's a maternal colony that is a nursery colony. Only the females kind of go to one spot, they give birth to their one, pup, and they raise them, collectively. And we were trying to figure out though, what's that mean? What's it gonna, how are we gonna have to deal with that? And I think I just casually mentioned it, at a break at a collaborative meeting. And Dan he'd done some work when he was working in private industry on Townsend long-eared bats. They were originally called eared bats, but it's long-eared bats. And he gave us all he got really into it and asking for photos of them. How big is the colony? And if you go at, this time of, of the late afternoon, females will individually come out and go feed, and the others stay and take care of the young. And he also talked about, you know, what we as people could learn from Townsend long-eared bats about, you know, collectively, you know, kind of taking care of the next generation. And that kind of stuck with me, you know, that it wasn't just about bats, but, you know, he learned lessons for humans from the wildlife that he had studied. So that was something that kind of stuck with me, and anyway, so that's my one reflection. So the what we have kind of brewing kind of idea, and we you know, kind of emailed Ted a little bit about this, and I've also talked to both Judy Morris and Jeremy Brown, is that what we would like to do is construct a proclamation in Dan's honor that would be approved by the Board of Supervisors. You know, kind of taking some of the information that Kelly, you know, wrote in the proposal to the Forest Service for the Partnership Award, taking some of the things that you all said, you know, today, you know, kind of, you know, little tidbits of his life. And I would open up to people, just send me any other thoughts you might have. Funny ones like the tire, funny ones like the, you know, taking an apple alongside the road and how you can't get away with that in a government rig. You know, whatever that might be, and then we will go, we'll build that proclamation and take that to the Board of Supervisors, and what we hope is to then be able to have it voted on and presented to his family, you know, at a Board of Supervisors meeting if that's possible. If not, we'll figure out some other way. As a part of that, one of the things that we thought about was to create in that proclamation an annual award that would be awarded by the Board of Supervisors for a cooperative conservation kind of award, for somebody within the community who is going above and beyond the call of duty, you know, to support the mission and the vision of this collaborative. So that was our thought. And it hasn't cooked any more than that. I mean, haven't sliced up the potatoes and put them in there. Don't really know what the proclamation's gonna say yet. We really wanted to get feedback from, you know, the people who have worked with him. We wanna get with, you know, his staff at Mad River and get some of their thoughts, you know, what they would like to see, you know, in that also. So that was kind of what we thought about, you know, and that's as far as it's gone. So any, you know, comments, thoughts, you know, direction?
Quite a while ago now, on the Shasta T, Weaverville Ranger District, when Fred Ritchie passed away, they did a memorial plantation for Fred Ritchie up on Montgomery Ridge.
Yeah.
And it's the Fred Ritchie Memorial Plantation. And I just thought it'd be kind of cool if we had a Dan Dill Memorial field break. And we, you know, whether it's one of the existing ones right off of the Mad Ridge field break, or you know, something else, it'd be kind of cool just to have that as a memorial type thing.
Okay. What is, I'm sure there's a process.
Yes, there is a process.
Other than us, somebody just like making a sign and us going up there and putting it up there.
It might be that easy.
I
It
think
wouldn't be the
is
worst thing that's been done out there.
You know, the Mad Ridge Fuel Break was named after Bob Rice,
Right,
our
right.
supervisor
He was
here.
on the rack.
And as I remember, it was just done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So Ted, if you could at least investigate, and we could make that part of that proclamation too, you know, potentially. Diane?
Yeah, and one of our locals here, Old Time Forest Father, he makes out of whole logs, you know, dead and down, but he makes benches. It's a whole log, he just cuts it out, and I could get him to make one, and we could put it there too, because at some point, maybe his daughters would go there and reflect it. I think the log will stay for a pretty long time. I think they're oak, not sure what it is, but I have one.
That would be fitting for Dan.
Right.
Oaks were his favorite.
Yeah, so and also, we're gonna talk in the future about, restoring oak meadows and what have you. Maybe we could have that in mind eventually, one of those also be in his name, because I don't think we should just do one thing. I mean, he really was a visionary, and he inspired a lot of people. So hopefully we can continue it on, but I'll come up with that.
Okay.
I'll come up with the log bench. It's really pretty unique and cool.
So, I put a little asterisk by, this honoring Dan Dill, which is like actionable item. So, this would be an opportunity for somebody to, if they wanted to make a motion for us to go to the Board of Supervisors with the proclamation kind of thing.
I would so move.
Okay, Joseph.
Second.
Second, Larry. Any further discussion?
We'd like to add thanks and praise to the cookers of the stew.
Oh, thank you. Okay, if no other discussion, all in favor, raise your hand.
Kenneth
Tom
votes yes.
Tom is writing, but I'm assuming his
Yeah,
hand is
I
up
am.
also.
I can't
Okay,
do
so-
two things at
Yeah,
once.
I know. You used to before you retired.
Yeah, exactly.
Two things that, I found that, in fact, two things at once usually leads to a nap. Okay, so that was approved, and we will move forward with, Judy and, Jeremy, and we'll keep people posted on the timing. We might need to find out, the Board of Supervisors meets first and third Tuesdays of the month, but I think they're only gonna meet once in December, so I'll need to find out when they're scheduling meetings, so we can see if we can coordinate with family and that sort of thing. Okay.
Follow up on that nomination for the Regional Foresters Award, I'm looking at the calendar, it's likely that's either the evening of December 10th or December 11th
Okay,
in Sacramento.
in Sacramento. Okay. Bob?
Whenever it comes before the board, it'd be kind of neat to give a heads up to the Trinity Journal and knock a nice photo op.
Yeah, I will. And even if not, Wayne is always really good that if you take the photo and give him the caption, he'll find space in the newspaper for it. We will do that to try to get, and, it might make be a good thing for, RCD newsletter and things like that also. Okay, so with that done, on to forestry kind of issues. And wanted to start with Jennifer, and she had a couple of specific projects she wanted to highlight, and then bring up whatever else you've got to, and go from there.
I'm gonna stand because
Yeah.
I can't really sit. All right, so a couple things, we talked about the Holy Peaks salvage sale, I think at the last meeting. It did sell, and it is operating. So Sierra Pacific has been on site operating, I think, the last 3 weeks. Shut down a little bit last week because obviously super windy and who wants to operate in units full of snags, I think, trees in the wind. We are finding sadly, however, that, I think we were shocked to find, as was actually Sierra Pacific, that there's actually more defect and more kind of bugs in the wood than we expected. So, we're already working on Plan B to kind of clean up what doesn't get taken out because it's not actually harvestable. So, we had our fuels guys up kind of taking a look at that to come up with what the plan is to clean up all of those roadside units when we're finished with the logging. Still pushing forward to get what we're calling the east side sale out. So it's another unit that's kind of farther up in the OHV area and kind of down in Deadwood. So hopefully we'll have that out in the next week or so for sale. So it's kind of still pushing through to get that done. Obviously having to make some adjustments now, knowing how much defect is in the wood from the sale we already sold. So, but that is still pushing to get that out. So I'm proud that my staff of basically 1.5 foresters was able to hopefully get 2 sales out from the cart fire. So, while still trying to get the sale out on the campfire as well. So. like a
The
little
Holy
bit we
Peaks,
could.
was that a lump sum sale or a?
It'll be just like the one we did, so I think it's a scale sale, so only they get charged for what they actually pull out, yep. So, more like I said, obviously working with them because they were hopeful, as were we, that there was gonna be more sound wood in there. It's amazing to see the trees just kind of implode and, they look solid on the outside and they fall and they kind of poof into this little pile of sawdust.
That's a very wonderful lesson with the idea of, within a year, the value of burned wood is almost totally gone. So that encourage our operations to begin within a short period of time so that they can be done within a year.
We actually had the NEPA done relatively quick on that project because we included the salvage operations in our emergency stabilization. So really kind of focused on the hazard tree portion. What caught us is we have no capacity for, mark, layout, and crews because we only have, at the time we had one forester, we actually hired another one through fire rehab money. So we had to borrow foresters from Oregon, Colorado, Montana to, actually get here to do that. Now we have two different things. We have an IDIQ, so an indefinite in quantity contract that we actually have we jumped on with the Forest Service that'll allow us to contract that. So that's what we're doing at the campfire is actually contracting out the layout, cruise and mark, and the appraisal on that timber sale. So we think that'll make us go faster. And then we, as a state, also we're trying to hire what we're calling a salvage strike team. So we'll have foresters, wildlife biologists, basically people who need clearances and some forestry techs that will be based out of our state office in Sacramento, but available to respond to help offices, not only in California, but in other places, build capacity quick when you have a fire go through your area. So those positions are, I think, going to be flown relatively soon. So hopefully we'll be prepared for next fire season. And when they're not doing salvage related work, they're available for green project layout work. So trying to get ahead of it.
Would that strike team also be available for the Forest Service?
I would imagine if the Forest Service wanted to do an agreement to borrow them, we could do that. But at this point, we have such little, we had a California BLM forestry meeting, and we have 5 foresters for all of California BLM. So we're a pretty small group. So this will help their capacity and be able to respond faster. So anyway, on that note, so still kind of plugging away on forestry stuff, and then just wanted to make a plug that the Weaverville Community Forest has a public meeting Monday night in Weaverville. So spread the word if anybody's interested. And I'm going to be talking about upcoming work and plans for the community forest, and it'll be an opportunity to meet our new fire management officer, Rob Winkler, who just started 2 weeks ago.
And where will that be?
That's at the
Congregational Church at 6 in the evening.
It's on Main Street.
And it's at the church on Main Street, just didn't make the news list. So I think that's it for now.
Okay. Joseph?
Jennifer,
Yes.
do we have a date for the field trip yet?
No, I was working with Kelly because the dates that were proposed, either myself or my forester were available. So Heidi actually sent me a doodle poll yesterday to try to get ourselves and our FMO on the same page. So we'll get a date hopefully next week, I think. I haven't been in the office all week, so I haven't been able to actually look at a calendar really well. So hopefully we'll get something scheduled.
It's looking more like it'll be in the earlier part of November,
That's
probably.
my guess.
Early to
Yeah.
mid-November.
Yeah, Heidi's also our only sale administrator. So she's gotta be out on site doing the sale only. So we gotta figure out how to work that on her schedule. We're small but mighty.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw some sort of email announcement that you have a new state director.
We do. Karen Mortensen is her name. She's actually currently the Eastern States Director for BLM. Been with BLM, I think, like 20 plus years in different varieties of different jobs, from budget to, I think she actually started in the solicitor's office. She's an attorney by background. But yeah, so she'll start, I think, sometime in January. So we've been out of state director for quite a while now with a series of actings. So excited to have her. A lot of instability with the Washington office moving west right now. It's kind of a weird time in the BLM.
Okay, any other questions for Jennifer? If not, so,
I have a question.
oh, go ahead.
It's kind of general about timber sales. Pardon my ignorance on this, but I'm curious if you all kind of measure the economic impact that stays in the county from contracting out these timber sales.
We don't have any economists in the BLM.
That makes sense.
I think we actually may have one, they're in DC or wherever they're gonna be at. Probably somewhere in the west. But yeah, we don't, typically when we do things like that, we rely on our, partners or some other group to look at that analysis.
And I would tell you that, if you come to the community forest meeting on the evening of the 21st, kind of one of the underpinnings of the creation of the community forest, which is federal land that is managed in part through a steering committee, one of their kind of original visions and goals was, managing those forest lands around Weaverville for the economic benefit of the local community. So,
Okay.
but how that's measured is pretty loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
So there's been some work, I think, around the country doing that in different places. Obviously, it varies, by location. But there has been some work around those economics of commercial timber activities and how they affect the economy. I know that some of that was getting done in northern Arizona.
Joint Chiefs, so we're working up towards the end of the field season, so the two forests, what's happening on Joint Chiefs? So, you wanna?
I don't have a great update on.
No.
On Joint Chiefs, do you have? Yeah.
Okay. Tom, Joe?
Yeah, I'll be glad to go. So I'm happy to report that we spent $479,000 this year on TIFRS projects.
And remember what people might not know the acronym.
Trinity Post Fire Hazard Reduction Project. Is that close, Tom? So anyway, this is more of a west side on our unit, and so we've been successful. This is pile, cut, pile, and burn. And so right now we've just finished the high and palm. It's about I think just a little over 100 acres, just completed that. And so right now we're on Clark Creek. It's about 145 acres. We should have that done mid-November. And then the next project we're going to be going to a little bit later after that will be the Denny project. And I think that's just somewhere around 200 acres. So we still have a lot of work to do. And this next year we've asked for $632,000. If you remember that we received 70% of our ask, so we're not sure what we're going to get. But we did ask for $632,000. We'll see where that goes. Interesting enough, on that subject, I did ask Jason Coe. He's our liaison with the Washington office. I asked if we would receive, or is there a possibility of receiving any retroactive monies that we missed out, the 30% for fiscal year 19, and he says not likely, but there is a slimmer of a chance that we might do that. I'm not hanging my hopes on that. So anyway, looking forward, we still have Joint Chiefs looking in 2020. We have, I think, about 1,500 acres that we want to treat on the Weaverville Community Forest Maintenance Fuels Project, and so we're looking forward to that. And I'll talk a little bit later about that project.
Okay.
Joe,
Yes.
$632,000 is
That's what
next
he-
year's Joint Chiefs
Right,
money?
right, and that's for Trinity River Management Unit.
Oh, okay, so it doesn't include
I don't know
South
what the,
Fork and Six Rivers?
I don't know what yours is, Tom.
So that's the total for the Shasta Trinity, next year, and that'll actually be split, between the Weaverville Community Forest and the Dubakilla burning piece, around Wildwood.
Yeah.
That's the plan right now. If those two aren't successful, there's actually, within the proposal, there's some reforestation and pile burning, out in, the High and Palm area. So again, the focus for this, Joint Chiefs proposal was community protection. So all of the projects that already have NEPA, that's where we're focusing the implementation, for the Joint Chiefs.
So that was information given my fields on. Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, that's it on, anybody, any other questions on Joint Chief kind of things? No? Okay, and did you get anything from anybody from NRCS on Joint Chiefs?
No.
They're still in maternity leave mode, with minimal staff right now, so I've been able to get a lot from them. Okay, so then just more broadly, forestry project updates. We don't have anything from NRCS at all. Okay. Fuel break work group, what's shaking, been shaking, anything new and different that we need to?
Well, I'd ask Kelly, have we landed on a date for the going out to sea first 48?
November 1st.
November 1st, I think, is the date that we pretty much had the most response for, but I hadn't put out an announcement, I guess, which I should do next week.
So that would be the big thing.
That'd be
able to
going
go
out to
out
look
there
at
and
first
actually
48.
see,
Yeah.
after it's been operating.
Okay. Okay. Nothing else?
What's the impression so far from, first 48, from both the ranger district and from the supervisor's office? You guys think, how does it look?
Just talking to Nancy, she said it was good. She's going through there and using the masticator, I guess, right now.
And this was a commercial sale, right?
Commercial, but then they were
And then there was service work.
follow-up, and the
Follow-up
Forest Service was doing that with.
Do we have any idea of volume that came off of it at this point? I mean, I know,
Total is supposed to be 5 million.
Yeah, yeah, that's in that ballpark.
Okay. And who bought it? Was that
Trinity River.
River? Okay. So we probably, well, they're on the email list, so hopefully they'll send somebody out on the field trip. They should
I'll make
reach
sure
out.
I'll reach out to them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
it'd be
reach out
good,
to them,
because
make sure that.
I'd like to hear what,
what
from
they
the
think about-
operational side.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other, yeah, okay.
And there will be operations on that day if we wanna go check out some operations. We'll have our sale administrator and our new forest timber management
Okay.
officer there, so they can be engaged in the conversation as well.
Okay, is there, it could be in the email, but particular safety kind of stuff people should be bringing?
Hard hats.
Hard hats, air protection maybe.
And that was all
Good
good
shoes.
wood, wasn't
Yeah.
it? There wasn't any firewood in that? Burned wood?
It was not, it was
There
green.
was some burn
Oh,
wood
was
up
there?
on top of that one road system that they wanted to clean up, but I don't think it was even good for firewood anymore.
Okay, but primarily it was good wood, green.
Yeah, okay, okay.
Actually, that district, deserves a little bit of an award for they're always hustling for firewood to the public. They bring it down to a lot next to one of their stations and people can saw it. They'll rent or borrow or steal a dump truck and bring it down.
Nice.
They've been offering free use for people as well.
That's no longer in place.
Oh.
Now you have to buy your permits again, but.
What you guys did for a while.
Yeah, yep.
The other thing that's going on is the Acre Woods, we were gonna have last night was supposed to be the scoping session, but due to illness, they had to cancel it, so I don't know, is that gonna be rescheduled shortly, or?
Yes, it'll be rescheduled, first week of November. First full week of November.
Okay.
I know it's a little ways out, but she's pretty sick and
Okay.
she
So
really wants to.
when you got that firmed up, maybe you could send an email to Kelly or myself, and we can put it on put it out as an email to
Yeah.
folks. Okay. Okay, so Shasta Trinity, just general other stuff. Rock, paper, scissors, who was first, or?
Since Joe went first last time.
Okay.
Few different updates. So related to free use, we actually are working on sending out a notification to those that have expressed interest in free use related to the Trinity Post Fire Hazard Reduction and Salvage Project. So all of those road corridors that are Wildwood, High and Palm, around the Hayfork area, at least for the South Fork Management Unit, we're sort of exploring that idea. There's also the Dobbins Gulch in the Indian Valley. There's some chunks out there that there was a sale that didn't sell. And so there's material that is available explored that in the past. We're definitely going to try to exercise that this year, going winter into the spring. Implementation wise, there was lots of work that occurred, some of this from prior years of Joint Chiefs, partly from the CCI grant that the Watershed Center got. Retained receipts, we're working on a project. So Westside Plantations, there's been lots of work with that. The timber sale completely wrapped up. It was actually sort of this summer that the final pieces were of that. We went out and looked at that. It looks really good for sort of the expectations that we had. There's definitely some pile burning that has occurred. You know, mixed success with how the piles, and a lot of that was lessons learned of, you know, how big do landings need to be, how do we manage that within existing plantations and natural stands around that. So, you know, still learning from some of those experiences. The RCD and the Watershed Center have both been working in Westside Plantations and Middle Hayfork under agreements. We were able to put into contracts using the CCI grant that the Watershed received for more work in Westside Plantations, in addition to what they are under agreement to do. There was also a NIFWIF grant that was operated on this year by Watershed Center, so money that the region put into an agreement with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation that they were able to work in some of the pre-commercial fin units in Westside Plantations. Joe sort of spoke to this a little bit, the Trinity post-fire hazard reduction, because there was no salvage, so let's just drop the S. Phase 1 is completed just this last month. Phase 2 has already started working, and so the areas that they have worked in are sort of the Wildwood area, the High and Palm area. They're starting working in Denny, in the Burnt Ranch areas. Those are the focuses that we have for this year. Is both piling, thinning, and burning has occurred on those under those contracts. Burning will continue with the piles that exist. You know, if you drive out in High Palm or you drive Wildwood Road, you'll see those piles. Those are all planned to be burned as we have those windows that are going to do that burning. 2015 fire reforestation, both reforestation and site prep, both thinning, piling, and burning occurred this last year. Barker Fire, the Peak Fire, Johnson Fire, Castle, River, Rail, and Shield. So if you remember any of those names from 2015, all those areas had work this last year. Most of the reforestation piece is done. We're not actually planning reforestation this year, this spring. There's a sort of a waiting period to see how those respond, what that looks like that we need to do potentially in 2021. There was reforestation also in the Sims Fire area. The Great Fire that burned through onto the Shasta Trinity, all of that was reforested this year with money that we had in what is sort of thought of as a permanent trust, RTRT. Some of that money and some of the money from the Sims Fire fire settlement was used towards that. We also worked on property lines and roadside buffers with agreements with the Watershed Center. They finished the piece, they finished the amount of money that we had for them on the Shasta Trinity side. They shifted over onto the Six Rivers side and are mostly complete with that. So we're actually looking to put a contract in place to finish that for the roadside and property boundary buffers in the Sims Fire area. A lot of things for implementation. Planning wise, pilot is still the #1 priority on the west side. We've struggled with staffing for that and actually production because of the staffing issues that we've had. The comment period is proposed, so specialist reports are due at the beginning of November. We've gone through 5 different ID team leaders because of staffing issues, putting that into a work order. It's been so painful. So November is when those specialist reports are due. The comment period, we're shooting for December, January. December is sort of tough because of Christmas holiday. So it actually may be January to sort of honor, hey, people are not available to look at this. Get that out in January. That then puts the objection period starting in March roughly the decision in May if there is an objection. If there's no objection, that's just 45 days, so it's actually mid-April that we're shooting at for a decision. If there's no objection, May if there is an objection. Dubakella, the decision memo, I'm wrapping that up. I am also the NEPA planner for the South Fork Management Unit. Totally failing at that. So we're shooting at the end of this month, beginning of November, to get that signed by Scott. There's a timber sale that is prepped. The contract, we're just wrapping up those pieces for that to go out. That is about 275 acres, about 2 million board feet with that sale. And then there's a really large block of burning that's proposed as a part of that as well. And that's the piece that the Joint Chiefs funding would potentially go towards, is to do a lot of burning along the Highway 36 corridor and into sort of that Wildwood area of the Dubakella project. And then the last project that we're working on that both Dan Osman, my fuels planner, and I have been working with the Fire Safe Council out in High Pond quite a bit of designing a fire resilient community proposal. As we talked about in the past, the next sort of roads and plantations is actually on the TRMU, so I haven't been as focused with that. So we've been focused with the High Pond Fire Safe Council. We're actually gonna go out on a field trip with that Fire Safe Council to look at a couple different areas tomorrow and talk about what is the proposal. Scoping is potential for, late winter, early spring, as a really rough proposal in order to, get a broader input from the community of, does this make sense? Is this the direction that we want to go? And then somewhat of a delay given where this sits in the priorities of what the analysis will occur. So behind the Weaverville Community Forest, behind Corral Bottom, but something that we'll start to work on for that project. Like I talked about staffing, so we're still trying to fill the timber management officer. That has been in the works for almost 2 years now. It's been proposed in the system twice. Unfortunately, lack of applicants the first time. The second time, we were not approved to actually fill that because of technical details in our org chart, and so that's still in the system to be filled. The GS11 archaeologist, we're just starting to move that forward in the official system. There's the GS11 planner that we're having discussions at the forest of how we can fill that, whether we will fill that. And then there's a GS9 forester that's been vacant for over a year that is also caught up in sort of the hiring system issues that we are having.
You just got an art person, is this an additional one?
So that's the GS9, that's huge. We also have a detailer that's here until November 8th. And so, detailers are good and bad in that, hey, they come and help us sometimes, and sometimes our people go on details and we lose them. So we have a permanent GS9 that's out of Weaverville. The 11 is here until November 8th. Because of the holiday season, we probably won't fill another detail. It'll depend on how the permanent hiring system goes, but we do plan to fill another detail starting in January if we haven't filled that permanently. Randy Paris, our silviculturist on the west side, who has also been covering as the timber management officer, is going on a detail starting November 8th as a district ranger down in Arizona, so she'll be gone for 4 months. We have a resignation in our timber prep. We have a retirement in our fax coordinator database person, and Joe has some vacancies as well. And so staffing continues to be problematic for specifically the South Fork Management Unit, but the west side as a whole. Sorry, but
Concerning the west side plantation, that's the non-commercial part that you're doing now. You mentioned several pieces of funding you had for that. I didn't hear anything about the $600,000 in retained receipts.
So there are multiple proposals that we could move forward with. We're actually working on what's called an IRSC, so it's a service contract, but there may actually be commercial products that come out of that. So it's that marginal piece the timber sale piece that just finished, that was the best of the plantations, the oldest, the bigger trees. The next round that we're working on to actually come out in the next couple months does use some retained receipts to continue to thin plantations. Some of those could have commercial products, you know, post and pole, may actually be at that level. We just talked with our contracting officer at the forest. She's convinced that there's potentially another commercial timber sale as a part of some of the units that weren't included in that IRTC, and so we're looking into that as well. Right now, the proposal is a little bit less than 200,000 of those retained receipts would go into the IRSC, so I think it's 180,000 going into that next service contract, and so that would leave over 400,000 sort of available. And that can go towards restoration work, so watershed restoration. It can go towards thinning, because we've put Joint Chiefs money towards that. The Watershed Center has been successful with their CCI grant. We've been able to use the NIFWIF agreement that the region put towards that. So not all of the retained receipts need to go into plantation thinning for that project. They can also go into watershed restoration within that stewardship area that is the West Side Plantation. So we're exploring, you know, what does come next with that. We know the first piece of those retained receipts is part of the.
So Tom, maybe if December is timely, maybe a little flesh on the bones on that, if you've got that.
Sure.
Yeah. Might be good for folks.
I forget if we mentioned last time, but it's kind of interesting to me that recently the Watershed Center has been paying the Forest Service crews to do work, tens of thousands of dollars.
So they didn't pay our crews, they actually used our contracting mechanism because they weren't able to put that in a contracting mechanism as quickly as we could, which blows my mind.
Well, so it's just
Honestly,
odd things are
this is notable in the region that this was so successful. This actually hasn't happened anywhere else. That we were able to put a chunk of money, I don't remember how much, into our contracting system, and then that went out as a contract. So it actually didn't pay for any of our staff time, but it did go through our system as a contract.
Yeah, so usually, I mean, historically, the nonprofits have been paid by the Forest Service to do something. Now, the nonprofit is paying the Forest Service.
So that's the huge opportunity with the CCI grants of, we're actually gonna have a conversation with both the RCD and the Watershed Center next week of the next proposal for a CCI grant.
And CCI is California Climate Change.
California Climate Change Initiative.
And we're
so
talking-
it takes a lot of their funding sources through propositions and the greenhouse gas funds and sort of just puts them into one pot for different types of awards.
But we're talking big money.
Huge money. So the Watershed Center got $1 million, and that's sort of on the lower end. There's two different types of proposals. There's a community protection proposal, which is sort of $1 million, maybe 750,000 to 1.5 million community protection, right? So thinking right around a community. And then there's a forest health grant that is much larger. So million is the absolute smallest, and that's actually the first award that the Watershed Center got. They're looking for much larger projects, for much larger dollar awards. And so that's actually the conversation next week of, you know, how do we collectively in Trinity County compete for that pot of money?
And if I might suggest that maybe we should widen the circle a little bit, and BLM ought to be somehow part of that conversation, you know, because they obviously struggle with budget issues also, so, you know, maybe a proposal.
I'm not
would be-
excluding you, I swear.
No, but
I
anyway,
think
it seems to
facilitating
me,
conversation.
especially in the context of the community forest meeting coming up on Monday, you know, that could be, you know, an opportunity also.
And yeah, just one thing, again, the broader the umbrella, the more competitive these grant proposals
Yeah.
are. So the more inclusive, the better, the broader the landscape, the more.
So they really have to
partners
come
at the table.
from not a federal agency. So we can't submit this and be successful. We can technically submit proposals, but they've already told us we're not gonna be successful. So we don't submit this. It's actually, you know, third parties, county governments, other entities that make those proposals successful.
So we sat down with the Watershed Center and the RCD sat down to talk about this and talk about sort of the scope of what we're actually interested in going for. The Watershed Center is gonna actually be submitting the forest health side, proposal for the forest health side, which we don't quite know the scope of yet. That's what the meeting next week's about. And then the RCD is gonna propose for the fire prevention side, which is the other pot of money. But the idea is that, as was mentioned, that they're much more competitive if we're coming from like a single proposal for like an entire regional area, like the whole county basically. So that's why we're kind of divide and conquer at this point. And with the support of the Trinity County Fire Safe Council, the intent would be that these are going to be much larger asks, because it appears that the CAL FIRE wants to administer as few of these grants as possible. So the larger that the pot of money is that we can get, the easier it is for them to prioritize to us. So you know, right now what we're looking at is they're combined. We're needing to figure out exactly how that mechanism works as far as partners are concerned, because we've had issues with other funding sources, and whether or not subcontracts can be awarded, and so there's a number of like issues like that we're needing to address before we actually go this route. But the thought is that on the fire prevention side, that the RCD would basically be proposing, it would be, you know, something like $800,000 or $1 million for 3 years worth of you know, on the ground implementation. And then and then the Watershed Center would be looking at probably $1.5 to $2 million worth of some implementation, but largely a lot of planning dollars and things like that. So I mean, it's there's a couple different avenues that we're exploring, and like I said, divide and conquer. We want to try and make these as compelling proposals as we can, so that we can bring some fairly significant money to the county.
It's actually combined and conquer in this case.
Yes. Well, I mean, in that, yeah, if we have two funding streams and we're you know, trying to
Not competing
against each other. Yeah, because that was the thing with the
We're
last
kind of
round.
almost combining them, not dividing.
Yes. So, yep.
Clarence.
So Tom, early in your talk, you mentioned a lot of different projects that you've worked on this year. Can you, off the cuff, give us an estimate of how many acres of post-fire you did and how many acres of reforestation that all those projects aggregated to?
Yeah, so the reforestation piece, some of that was in post-fire, so there was
Okay.
some site prep and some burning
Got
in
it.
that. You know, Joe, you spoke about a number of TIFers of how much was implemented.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking both with the 2015 reforestation, that site prep, and the Trinity post-fire, we're close to 500 acres of those linear treatments and those isolated plantations that were treated this year. Reforestation, so there was kind of a mix of how we could get that reforestation for 2015 through the plantation piece, their site prep, and then those outside plantations, the natural stands. There wasn't any site prep in those because of the potential for, you know, complications with salvage and, you know, just complexities that wasn't included. And so a lot of the reforestation, I think we're like 450 acres of reforestation this year. It was a really big push for the number of acres that were accomplished.
Okay, thank you.
So on the post-fire salvage treatments, without the S, are we, is the goal to create those corridors in such a way that the bulk of any trees that could, dead trees that could break off and fall in the road are being felled and then piled and burned, or are we still gonna have the problem of dead trees standing along the roads, eventually breaking down and falling and plugging roads?
So the immediate corridor, right, the 150 feet on either side, those trees are all being felled. That hazard is mitigated. The hazard trees that could strike the road that may be beyond that, those, unless there's an OSHA concern of, hey, they need to be dropped, we're not dropping those because that's not authorized by the NEPA. we could, as emergency actions, go and drop those things as we identify them, to then pile them or do other things, that wouldn't occur. So this has been really successful of getting that initial corridor right along the road, yes.
Okay, any other questions for Tom?
Thank you.
Next batter up.
All right. How's everybody doing?
Pretty good, we're gonna be early to lunch.
I can
All
take care
depends
of
on how
that.
No, you won't.
Let me talk about RAC first, because, there was a question before this meeting started. I wanna let you know that we have, it was a real priority, and I am so glad I got that nomination package in about 6-7 weeks ago. So we do have confirmation. Carol Underhill, our public information officer, I submitted that to her. We both looked at it together, and she thought it was a good product. She mailed it to the White House Liaison's office for RAC. And so we got confirmation that that was received about 6 weeks ago. So I think the question is, how long is it going to take? I hear horror stories, I'm looking at Bob, and he tells me, Joe, don't get your hopes up too bad. I mean, it may be something like 2 years. I'm not hearing that right now. So I'm hearing more like 6 months. So if we're 2 months, a month and a half, I think we're pretty close to 2 months. Maybe we got 4 months left. That's my hope. And so if we're gonna be successful spending that money, about $600,000 worth, we need to have that panel in place. So I'm pretty excited about that. I know Keith Rose was asking about that, our county supervisor. So it's out of my hands. It's in the White House Liaison's office. I did receive that confirmation through Carol. Yeah.
What happens if the panel is not determined to that money? What happens to the money?
I mean, if we don't have a panel,
Yeah. Is there a
may
time
roll over
frame
to
on
the
it?
next year, but
It'll roll over?
that's what, well, we did receive a rollover, 250,000, just less than that, from the previous cycle into this. Not sure how that's gonna work out.
They usually roll over up until deadlines, at
The
which
deadline
time it goes back in the treasury.
Right. My understanding is the deadline for
21.
allocating the funds by the RAC, making recommendations to the floor supervisor, is September 30 of 2020. That's my understanding.
That's correct.
So if we don't get the RACs in place to be able to meet and make recommendations to Scott by then the money goes elsewhere. But my understanding from Scott's predecessor was that the forest supervisors do have some latitude for unspent RAC funding to allocate it to projects. And that was my understanding.
To previously approved projects.
Previously approved, so we had, if those projects are still, cause we, last time we met, we had a list of things that didn't get funded. And those, or got underfunded, if those are still valid, need to be done projects, that there's the potential that the supervisor can put the money into those. But it takes it out of any future discussions by the public.
So anyway, with that, I've been talking to other RACs in Northern California, and I am considering, I'll talk to Scott about this, and maybe seeking an effort to request for proposals, project proposals, before we get the RAC approved, just so we're timely before this September 30th deadline. So we've got to sort that out, but that's on my radar. I may decide to do that with Scott's concurrence on that. Moving on, any more questions as far as RAC? I think the good news is it's in process.
The one you said, was the 13 proposed panelists?
I have 15. Yeah.
And is that in
Well,
addition to two
13
existing?
with the two that's in place, Pam Mossberger and Brian Taylor. Yeah,
So
they're in place.
You forwarded a complete wrap.
Did, we'll see how it goes. Maybe we'll get 100%, our batting average will be 1,000. We'll see. I'm hopeful. And I have heard that there has been 100% acceptance of some RAC proposals. 4 months, hopefully, right? All right, let's talk about fire salvage. The Car Delta Road Maintenance Project, it was a CE. I've talked to you a little bit about this before. We have some fire salvage sales. We advertise. I'm happy to report that the two on the TRMU side, we did have bids. We have an award, 7.3 million board feet. Trinity and Divide, we split the two sales up just so we thought we would have a better response by bidders. Sierra Pacific Industries bought the two projects. They just started cutting on Monday. We haven't heard the trees are blowing up. Where's Jen? Oh, there's Jen. We haven't heard that. We have a pretty good size average DVH on that offering. So we're gonna find out more as they get into it, but so far, so good. So.
Well, there's a difference because the Delta fire started 2 months after the car fire started, so
Right.
that 2 months was pretty
It
critical.
is, especially for fire salvage, and it's really dependent on elevation. So those two sales that I mentioned, Trinity and Divide, they're about 3,500 feet. So 3,500 to 4,500 feet. So I'm not sure what the elevation was on yours, Jim, but, yeah.
2,000 feet.
Yeah, I think they're definitely lower. So, we do have one more offering, onion. Actually, we have two, onion and shield. We have that advertised last week, and bids Wednesday of next week. So we are hopeful. The other project that we have slated, it's about 5 million board feet. We don't have that advertised yet, but we're still rolling along with that. That's a little bit higher of the elevation even. That's about 4,500 feet, so we'll see how that goes. The one that's advertised now in bids next Wednesday is 750,000 board feet, so a little bit smaller, but pretty strategically located. I should say on the SHMU, we did have an offering called Lower Slate. Had more of a pine component. That did not sell. A bidder can come up and take it off the shelf and make an offering, but I guess about 2.5 weeks ago, we did not have any offers on that. So we'll see what happens. On to, any questions on fire salvage? I should also say on the Car Delta Road Maintenance CE, it's just not fire salvage, it's road maintenance. It could be ditch cleaning, road grading, ditch cleaning, all that's gonna be a part of the action. We also have some non-commercial standing hazard trees that we will start hitting as well. They don't have the volume per acre component to make it a commercial sale, so we didn't wanna leave those, so we captured those as well. And so, we got a lot of work ahead of us. I would imagine for the next 3 years, maybe 4 years of work on that project.
Is there a burning component associated with that? Not the commercial part, but do you have for?
Pile, yes.
Pile
Pile
burning
burning.
afterwards?
Yep, not on the shore burning, but we do have some pile burning on that. Good question. Thanks. Let's talk about the WCF, Weir Rail Community Forest Fuels Maintenance Project. That's a project that's dear to my heart. It's about a 5,000 acre project within the Weir Rail Community Forest. We've already started an ID team. We've had 2 ID team meetings. We've had a field trip. And so we're hoping for a decision sometime in March. We're running up to some archaeological issues, past archaeological surveys. We're working on that. And so we want to make sure that we keep our programmatic agreement really, really good with shipbuilders. And so my hope is that we can implement this. And by the way, it's part of the Joint Chiefs. We have about 1,500 acres within that project. So we have a real need time-wise to get that project out. I should also say that with this project, the Weir Rail Community Forest Fuels Maintenance Project, we have a lot of buy-in on that. A lot of people are excited about that. This is also a fuels maintenance. So we have a lot of projects in there that have been burned years ago, but no maintenance. We struggle with that maintenance of some of our fuel breaks. So we decided to pick this up and make our investments good. So it begs the question, why put a fuel break in if you can't maintain it? Well, we can. And so we are gonna maintain those field breaks. Turning the Alps prescribed fire, that's an EA. We had a draft EA out. We had, I think comments were due by August 26th. And so, interesting comments, and so we thought that everything's a go-go green light, right? No. So we discovered that there was a member of the public who used to work for the Forest Service, and they came in and said, wait a minute, hold the phone. We have some archaeological issues, so we're working that out. As a result, we're going back and making sure that those archaeological sites that were not part of the project record, we're making sure to go back in and resurvey, reevaluate those, and find them to make sure that, are they warranted to put in the project record. So we're going back. It's a little hiccup. With the archaeologists that we have on hand, we've been able to get in there and take a look at it. I don't think this year, before the weather hits in, we'll get all the areas to be surveyed. I'm thinking we'll have a little more work to do next year. So that begs the question, are we gonna be able to implement next year? Same question. So next year, maybe I can give you in a collaborative meeting a little bit more of an update.
Is that mainly down in the Denny area?
Yes, just above the Denny area, you bet. Yeah, it takes in, really the core of the project is Meagrum Ridge. And of course, you know what happened with the Meagrum windfall and blowdown and fire. That's one of those areas we definitely want to do. So we have met with the Karuk tribe on this. We have yet to meet with the Hupa. That is scheduled. And so we hope to, we certainly have buy-in, but we want to make sure that the timing and dates, they're understood. They will be partners in implementation on this, so it's definitely going to be just not a collaborative planning, but a collaborative also in the implementation side. Moving on, we have the Corral Bottom. Corral Bottom is a project that I met with some of you in the field break meeting we had about a couple months ago. I mentioned that we had an enterprise, which is part of the Forest Service. He's a forester, came and took a look at it. There was delay after delay getting him in there, but we finally got the report back. So the good news is, it's definitely commercial. I mean, it warrants a commercial offering. And there's some other things that we can do in there as well. So once we frame up what areas, what units, plantations, and roads we are going to define and go in, I will let you know, and we'll have another follow-up based on what our findings are. More refined, yeah.
So what guidance did you give this for? Did you talk to Tom or go through the first 48 or see our white paper or what, how did he figure?
No, but he did have the prescription, the field break prescription in hand when he took a look at it. He didn't look at the 48. It was just hard enough to get him there. And so, yeah, maybe we could have done a better job than that, but.
Well, and I'm just trying to make sure how close he is to what we had in mind or what we talked about.
Yeah.
It sounded, if he interpreted the prescription faithfully, then.
Yeah, so there's still a lot more work to do, silviculturally, forestry-wise. That was just a first look. What are those opportunities? What is carrying, what plantations or what age group are carrying the volume? What's the greatest need for thinning? And so there's still more work to do. We just wanted to have a jump start in having someone go in there. As Tom mentioned, we have staffing issues galore, but we felt like we needed to get somebody in there to take a look at it that was a forester to give us a preliminary review. So there's going to be a little more work out there. I want to go out there. I used to work out there years ago for Sierra Pacific. I want to go out there and look at myself to see what makes sense. Does that answer?
Yeah, it's promising for now.
Yeah, it has a really lot of potential, I think.
So Joe?
Yes.
When you get around to that one to do layout, I'd recommend that you bring some of the fuel break work group out there to be sure they're getting the prescription, because what we've seen in the past is nobody really gets it exactly what we wanna do, even though you
Yeah.
see the prescription on paper. It takes Tom and some of the others out there to really point it out, how to go about laying it out. And I don't think anybody on your staff has had experience with that.
No, and, you know, that meeting that we had a couple months ago, maybe it was a little longer than that, that was an issue. It was raised by Tom and a few other people, that is it has a potential to be a bone of contention. And, I don't wanna start off that way, you know, I wanna make sure that we are on the same page. And actually, I wanna see the work, I mean, I mentioned this to you at that meeting, that I wanna take a look at it myself. Not to say it doesn't make sense on paper, I mean, it does, it looks okay, but I wanna see it on the ground, so I can visualize it. Sometimes visualizing makes all it's worth 10 million words, right? So. Any other questions on Corral Bottom? Let's go to Burke Ranch. Not a whole lot to report on Burke Ranch. We decided to make the pilot project a priority. I think once we get close to having pilot wrapped up, we're gonna start picking up Burke Ranch. I think we'll pick it up a little bit more of it in earnest once we get pretty close to the pilot decision. So, not really a whole lot, like I said, to report on that, but more to come. It's on my radar. It's one of our legacy projects. Legacy projects, just for those who don't know what a legacy project is. Some are smiling. It's Trinity Alps, Prescribed Fire, Burke Ranch, and the pilot. Yeah, those are the
Petty
three.
John.
And Petty John, thank you. I'm not gonna go into Petty John, that's under litigation, but there is some movement on that, that's all I'll say. Flat Fire, we are looking for, hopefully soon, some monies will be coming our way to do some restoration work on the Flat Fire. We're already starting to put heads together as to what we're going to do, that are deeper ready, so we can spend that money readily available. And so, we're just waiting for that time to say, here's Shasta Tree, here's your money. So, more to come on that.
So in the flat fire, there was a settlement, right?
Yes.
How much of that settlement dollars comes back to the foresters?
To be determined. I don't have that figure. I don't know, Scott, I don't know if you have that figure, but we don't have that figure at this point in time. Yeah. Maybe next collaborative. Yeah.
Could you
correct.
remind us of where the flat fire is?
Yeah, it's, just above the 299 corridor. It's west of Big Bar.
Okay, gotcha.
Look in
Thank
that
you.
area.
That's like the '05 flat fire, way back, or is it
No,
more
no.
recent?
It was probably 08, 09.
Yeah. We get, I can show you.
I think it was 12. I think it was 2012.
Okay.
I was on a flat fire in that same area, 4 or 5.
Yeah, yeah. Moving on, good news to report, we have a timber sale administrator, on the west side. It was just announced about 2-3 days ago. He will be stationed in Weaverville, and so we're looking at an office. You need to find a truck, you need to find a truck, because sale administrators are on the road all the time. So, you know, what that says, that's kind of a message unto itself. If we're gonna have a timber sale administrator, you're gonna have timber sales to administer, right? Right. So, we do have, the Car Delta 2 projects that I mentioned. He's already started on that. Oh, I almost forgot, the Browns project, Browns Phase 3, it's about 116 acres. Warner Enterprises was, the bidder, the awardee. He's not going to come this year, he's still in Paradise, he's just busy there. I don't anticipate anything to change, so we're looking forward to a 2020 show. When that happens, I'll let everybody know. Kelly, if we can have that field trip, so no field trip this year, it's not gonna happen. We did start our prescribed burn season. Just a couple of days ago, we had a successful burn, 116 acres in a ballpark area, Trinity Center. It's between, I think, one of the most easternmost subdivisions and the lake. And so the ballpark area is pretty important for the Trinity Center folks. And we fired that off, what is today, Friday? I think we fired it on Tuesday, and we were successful.
That was piles?
That was another story burn. Yeah, we had some cemetery right in the middle of it, we had to protect that, and, it's looking pretty good. Actually, we fired off Wednesday, excuse me.
And Joe, from a community meeting last night,
Yeah.
a lot of positive comments from people in the Knoll subdivision.
Yeah,
Your
good.
folks did it, and,
Yeah.
you know, not too much smoke, and, though I heard from Coffee Creek, there was a lot of smoke.
Yeah,
But it
yeah.
was generally, very positive.
Yeah, I thought timing wise, we nailed it. So, we do have a burn plan next week, Musserville Grounds project, so, we'll see if the conditions line up to where we can do that. So, vacancies, just one, hold the phone. We do have an assistant rec officer. We filled our assistant rec officer position. Cliff Piper, he will start in a couple of pay periods, so on the rec side. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what the dates will be later. So vacancies, we still have some fisheries vacancies, on the TRMU side of Shasta Trinity, and we are going to engage in a serious discussion to get those positions filled. And so as you know, we have, could have consultation needs. We need to have that professional person in place to be able to, intelligently address those issues, with the issues that we have on the west side because of, our threatened endangered species. So, looking forward to that, and maybe we'll get a feel, hopefully, within the next 2 or 3 months. We'll see how that goes. That's all I got. Any questions for me? Yes, Jerry?
You mentioned, or was mentioned about litigation on Pettyjohn, and
Mhm.
maybe this is for Tom and you and Ted.
Yeah.
What is the status of any current litigation going on, and has there been any new filings on any of the upcoming projects? Just get a sense.
It's a good question. Not on any upcoming projects, but, maybe Joseph wants to talk a little bit about that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
there's, supposedly there's briefing going on for a date in court.
For
I'm not-
Pettyjohn?
Yeah.
Okay, but-
Probably won't be until, I think what I heard was probably next spring there will be a hearing.
But that's an old time, it's been
Yeah.
on for a while, so more importantly, I was just looking to see if there's anything current happening.
So, Larry, one of the things, on, I think it was either First 48 or Acre Woods or whatever, is that some of the national organizations were a little concerned about the project, and they haven't addressed those. What's your comment, or what's your feel as to how those national agencies are viewing our cooperative efforts here?
As far as I know, everybody's back on board. I think there was some misunderstandings about what was going on with First 48, but I think that's been it's only Conservation Congress that's upset, and the sort of clique of scientists that she has in her camp that have an issue with it. But as far as I know, there's no national groups that I'm aware of that are contesting First 48, and I have heard nothing about Acre Woods at all.
How about pilot? Is there any rumbling?
Well, once again, Conservation Congress is not happy with it. We went out in the field with them and wound up having a big fight with them. I don't know what to say about that. They just have a different vision. They just want to leave the forest as it is. But, other than that, I think all the other environmental groups, 99% of the environmental groups are on board with what we're
Yeah.
proposing.
So you think they'll push it there?
I don't think they've got any grounds to push it. They can be unhappy about it, but they gotta have some legal basis.
Yeah, I think there was a letter to the editor kind of thing, wasn't there, from Conservation Congress about First 48, but it was
Right.
just a letter to the editor.
Right.
Okay, anything else for Joe?
Yeah, just want to get a feel for the landscape.
Yeah. So, I'll talk a little bit later about another project, when Scott, has his piece, but, I'm optimistic for what we're doing on the TRMU. I would say SFMU, the west side, we got a lot of things cooking, and, my optimism is pretty good. I say pretty good, you don't
us out often and early on Corral, so that we make sure it's the kind of project everybody's proud of.
That's gonna be real,
Yeah.
of all the projects.
I say game on.
Bring it up.
No, Six Rivers, so who,
I'll give the general update and Charlie will give the specifics.
Okay.
I apologize in advance. Scott and I have to step out at noon for a meeting, and then at 2 I've got to step out, so I'll try to squeeze some stuff in so I don't miss anything important. Just in general though, just so you know, I am currently outreaching for district ranger on Mad River. There's no way we're gonna replace Dan. Dan was one of a kind, and you know, we're all gonna sorely miss him. The person that's gonna come in, what I'm looking for is someone that's, you know, shared stewardship, collaborative focus. That is how we do our business on Mad River in particular, for this group, and that's the type of person I'm gonna try to recruit. I also want to be clear, you know, Dan was very passionate about this group, this collaborative, and that was, you know, one of the primary talking points that he would have whenever we met as an FLT or got together and talked about program work. So, you know, it means a lot that I know it means a lot to him that, you know, kind of carrying on his memory and his vision. And with that, you know, I share the vision with that 10-year program of work that you developed with Dan for Mad River. So that's, you know, that's not going anywhere. That's what our vision's going to be for the Mad River District, is carrying that forward. That won't necessarily be all we're focused on, but the goal is to do that. If I have my druthers, we'll get it done faster than 10 years, but, you know, it depends on funding, you know, all the circumstances we have, but that's our goal, is to keep that moving forward. In addition, you know, I am gonna be hoping to get on your agenda here probably in the early parts of the next calendar year. In addition to that 10-year program of work, I briefly mentioned we have a forest-wide fuels programmatic approach that I wanna look at. And I wanna, you know, kind of paint that picture of what that vision is for that to go along with and enhance the specific projects. So just so you're aware of that. Again, it's gonna be broad, it's gonna be forest-wide, it's really focused at returning the fire-adapted ecosystems across the whole forest, and so it'll be more than looking at the roadsides and the fuel breaks, but how can we get fire to play its natural role? I'm excited about that because I think it goes well with the treatments that you have in this group as well. Let me think if there's anything else related to that. You know, a couple other things, just so you're aware of them. There's a lot of interest in how we use the material that comes off the forest, and that's one of the big expense, you know, the cost things we have is, you know, the treatment outside the commercial area, the service work. There's not an avenue for that material, so it's costly for us to cut and pile, burn, you know, mulch, all of those things. It's expensive, it's good work, but it costs a lot of money. There's a lot of work that we're pursuing. Humboldt County in particular, that might help us in that there's an initiative for mass timber and panelized housing that would take this small diameter materials, as well as a potential pellet mill that might be coming in. So there's some things in the works that would help remove some of that material off the forest, out of that smaller nature, that would help us kind of expand our scope and scale. So that's exciting stuff that's underway. With that, I think the afternoon session will talk about some of the other things, but I think Charlie's probably better prepared than I to talk about some of the specifics on
Not even a little bit.
on Acre Woods and some of our other projects. The other thing I did want to mention, so related to our 10-year program, my goal is to get one, hopefully 2 projects, the decisions done a year, and that just depends on the success we have. You know, our model is outsourcing, and we're using a lot of different ways to do that. We've hit a snag with some of our IDIQ it's not the end all be all, and we're running into some troubles with the contractor we have for Acre Woods. It's gonna delay that one going out, so just, you know, so you're aware of that. We'll figure it out, it's just not gonna get out as quickly as I was hoping because of the challenges there, but we're moving more towards the agreements because we're more successful with those than we are with the contracts. But, you know, that's part of our model, and a big part of the way we're able to attract money is by this group and how we're working together and doing things differently. As long as we can sell that and paint that picture, we'll get money and we'll be able to move on these projects. But that's kind of the factors, is how those funds come in and how we're able to demonstrate success. So I'm really excited for our field trip on the 1st to talk about, you know, what we have. I think it's a good start. I'm hoping we can expand those zones of agreement that we have here. I think there's more that we can do, but I'm excited to build on, you know, kind of what you've done and how we've gotten to this point. So anyway, I appreciate it. I value this group. I value how we're able to work together. I'm gonna let Charlie talk about any specifics that you might have in mind.
Let's see. I'm just starting to get into the meat of the projects. He said that we're running a little slow on the Acre Woods project, come into snafu with the contractors.
Who is the contractor? Is it?
NRC?
NRM.
NRM. See, still starting, learning.
What are they doing on the project?
They're marking and cruising.
Okay.
And that's the delay,
They're like
is
30%
they're supposed to be done and they're not. And so that's.
So has anybody from your staff looked and see if they're getting the prescription right?
Yes. Heather's been out there and Kristen's been out there.
Cause you know, that's critical. The first 48, first time the crews went out and marked it, we had to go out and look at it and sort of go through and correct a lot of stuff. Hopefully, somebody's checked with that crew. I don't know, it sounds like this is a different crew you got.
It's a different crew, and they're only, I think, optimistically a quarter done. So there's not a lot out there to check yet. There's some, but
30%.
so we're still in kind of negotiations on how we're going to finish that work, and I'm not optimistic that we're going to get it done before we're, you know, weathered out, but we'll keep after it. But yeah, that's a good point to make sure we're.
Yeah, if you're using outside crews, that, you know, this prescription is totally different from what any timber folks have ever done before. So we don't want them to make a timber sale out of it, we want them to make a shaded fuel break out of it. So, you know, we may have to add a little of our expertise to your, whoever is gonna finish the job and be sure it's right. We don't wanna see them get the job done and then we go out there and we see it and we say, no, this is not what we wanted here.
And the good news we have is we were able to steal someone from the Shasta T. Heather Hollister, is that her name? We have a new harvest inspector.
Well, she got married, so it's not Vanderbilt anymore, but it was Vanderbilt.
Okay, Heather. Anyway, so she's gonna be our primary person that's gonna help and go out, whether it's a contract crew, an agreement crew. She's gonna be the one that's gonna be holding that, and it'll be important for her to be tied in with you folks and get, you know, kind of up to speed. But we do have a person that will be a crew lead that's tied to the agency.
Can you get her to come on November 1st?
Yeah.
That would be the object lesson.
Yeah.
And you don't stand, just saying, the timber sale administrator that we just hired, he's gonna be helping us secure this as well.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, the contract ended today and they're only 30% done. Mark, just the marking. So they're giving them the extension until next Friday and then we'll.
Well, if they don't make it, you know, Watershed Center has a crew and they have some training at this, so, you know, you have another option.
Right, and you know, where we're at is, if they don't do the work, can we access that money and redirect it? And that, you know, that's, the reason we were trying the IDIQ is to move fast, because the Watershed Center, we've had they're busy as well. We've had them working, on both the Shasta T and our side, and we're trying to augment that, and it didn't work as well as we'd hoped.
parking, for instance, at what point do you think it's a good idea for, it to be looked at? Is it following the prescription? I mean, at 30%, it seemed like it'd be reasonable before they do more work. I mean, wouldn't this be a good point, is to look at it rather than waiting?
I think Heather's already been out there,
Okay.
and I think Krista is already out.
Kristen knows what it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Kristen or Krista?
Chris does knows what it is.
Yeah. So I
Chris
think
is the team lead for the
Okay.
project, so
Okay.
she's been,
So there's an experienced eye.
Yes.
right.
Okay,
yeah.
I'm just learning. I know we got Rat Tail coming up, Bucktail, we got other projects coming up.
No, I know, but also.
I'm just learning the meat of it right now.
Okay, so just generally, any other questions for the Forest Service folks? Kind of projects that you thought were gonna get talked about, that you need to- any for Jerry, the acting Forest Service?
Yeah.
Well, if not, then we did in fact get done early, and you guys get a little bit more lunchtime. So it's lunchtime, we'll be back here at 1. And keep sugar. Plenty of time for kind of the part 2 of the discussion that we started last time on the working together well and better than as well as we've been doing, you know, with the Forest Service, the 2 forests, and the collaborative. And I just had a thought that kind of came up during some of the morning discussion, and I think it was Jerry's question about any new litigation kind of thing. And so while, you know, maybe I think we all want to see the pace and scale of what we're getting done increase and improve, you know, for the benefit of the forest, the local economy, the triple bottom line that is our, you know, in our mission and vision. I mean, one of the things that certainly has happened is lots of projects, smaller projects, lots of things have gotten done, are in the pipeline. And one of the things that this collaborative has continued to be able to bring to the table is no new litigation. You know, the fact that we get projects done. We had the salvage, you know, with the Stafford fire, right, that went through. We had a small salvage on bottom of Weaver Valley Road, no problems there. We continued, we got the first 48. Larry took some heat in the newspaper, you know, but no challenges there. So we're building that, you know, that foundation that'll take us, you know, into the future. So I just thought that was an important thing. And even though we may say, God, why is the pilot project now a legacy project? You know, why? And I was in a meeting, God, where was it? The other night, somebody was talking about low-hanging fruit, projects that are low-hanging. Oh, it was actually the Board of Supervisors talking about how they need to do, Diana was there, they need to get on the general plan update. And the new planning director, Kim Hunter, said, well, the low-hanging fruit is the housing element and the safety element. And Carol was sitting next to me and she nudged me and she says, we know what low-hanging fruit gets you. So we're still waiting on some of our low-hanging fruit, you know, like the first mile of the lane trail, that sort of thing. But we are getting stuff done, you know, and it's up to all of us to help make it happen more efficiently and better. So with that, Scott wants to kind of start off the second part of our discussion with a slideshow of his vacation. A slideshow to kind of set the stage for this discussion. So I think I'll turn some of the lights off so you can see better. Don't fall asleep.
We may not go forward.
And then you got to go to I can do lights.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Other technology requires.
Say your straights, Pat.
So, you know, the last collaborative meeting, we had that discussion about kind of some of our differences and our desire to improve that relationship and kind of common shared vision. And so out of that, you know, there were a couple of questions of that as we talked about our ideas as a forest. Okay, so what are your ideas of the forest? What is the approach that you're speaking about? And so today was the idea to kind of go through that quickly, kind of starting broad at the national level and moving through the region and down to the forest and then down to the west side of the forest. And then end it with some of our thoughts around the relationship with the collaborative and where we see that evolving in terms of getting better. And so we can move through these, fairly quickly. To me, the discussion is much richer than the presentation, obviously. And so I'll start with my disclaimer. I built this last night. So there'll be misspellings and there'll be things in here that are not phrased right. And so hopefully it stimulates the conversation that we need. And so two topics. One is that approach to vegetation management in Trinity County that we're thinking about as a forest. And the second one is our thoughts about working with you. See if we can make that work. So I'll start with national and regional kind of context and emphasis. And this is very quick and summary, but the agency is really aligned around a couple of key concepts. One of them being work more in partnership, work more with people, do less work ourselves, do more work with others. That's from the national level down to the region, down to the forest, down to the districts. The other alignment is around dealing with the fire situation in the west, the departed conditions and the size and intensity of fires we're seeing. And then the other one is that we recognize that we need to continue to work on our work environment. You see some of that in the news, but just we need to continue to create an environment for people where they feel respected and appreciated and heard. And so not something so much for you, but just be aware that a key emphasis within our organization is how to continue to improve our work environment. So that kind of is the national. The regional context of that is that all the same things are true, but a little more specifics. And so the region's got an expectation or a goal of getting to 500,000 acres of vegetation management a year. And so that's kind of put some thoughts to where we are as a region and where we're trying to get. And then in the partnership world, the region is really focused on that cross-boundary work with your neighbors, recognizing that all these issues are at the landscape scale. You can't solve them on your lands. You have to be working with others. And so a real strong emphasis in the region around working cross-boundary and with neighbors. And then if you'll let me just finish one thing, then we'll go to your question. The last thing you should be aware of, or you want to insert the question here?
I'm a flexible guy.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I'll do this. Yeah.
I am.
Which one of your votes is flexible? All of them?
I'm just like.
The last piece to that is that we're going through some changes in the region, and we're going to be working more as zones and less as forests. And so there's zones in the forest. There's a Northern California zone that's got 6 national forests as part of it, and so that's the 6 rivers, the Klamath, the Trinity, the Mendocino, the Lassen, and the Modoc is what we're referring to as the Northern California zone. We're going to be doing more work as a zone, less work as a forest. And as an example of that, by 2021, most of our budgets will be allocated to the zone, not to the forest. And so it's a change for us. We've been in this world of sharing across boundaries. We're going to be doing more of that in the region. And that's a context that we all need to understand is just moving forward. And so, your question.
I'm wondering what the region, how it views this goal of 500,000 acres of vegetation treatment per year. If something happens on an acre, whether it's intensive or not, then that would be an acre of treatment.
Yeah.
So there could be any number of things. understory burn,
Yep.
and so it could be, it'll be a
Piling,
whole range.
understory
Within that
burn.
500,000 will be some light intensity treatment, some heavy.
Yep.
So the nuance with that is wildfire, right? So if it's low to moderate intensity, if it had positive fire effects on the ground, some of those can be counted towards sort of national targets. High intensity is generally viewed as not beneficial and so not counted towards that. As a forest, none of that counts towards any of our targets, but it does count towards the national targets.
So, jumping down to the forest is kind of a broad,
So-
yeah.
Oh,
another
I just
question?
would like to, regarding the zones.
Yes.
And how they're being delineated, is that due to ecosystems or management setups? I mean, probably some of both.
Yes.
But how much is it going to be zones that are similar in ecosystems?
So it's really a geographic
Mm-hmm.
part of the state. So you've got Northern California, you got Northern Sierras, Southern Sierras, and then Southern California. So those four zones. And in some cases, there's some similarities in terms of ecosystems, in some places
Not
there
at all.
isn't. And you see that, range across Northern California, of course. I mean, the Modoc and Six Rivers are a real difference.
Mm-hmm.
So jumping down to the forest and kind of an overview of what broad emphasis, one is that recognition of just how diverse our program of work is and just how valuable and important this forest is to people for so many different reasons. Can you see that?
Not really, but it's okay. Keep
Scott, I
going.
can bring it up. Let me bring it up.
You can,
What are you gonna do?
I can
it up
bring the
where?
screen up closer. Should we try that?
No.
That
said no. That said no.
So it's
Not in the middle of it.
Not in the
it
middle of
won't
the
get any bigger
presentation.
than that.
All right. And so, so that second point, given the current size and intensity of fires, we have to figure out how to increase the pace and scale of forest restoration as a forest. It's about everything we value coming from the national forest is at risk because of that. And so, we're undertaking an effort on the forest to accelerate that pace and scale. And we've got a goal that we've established that goes by the name of 50/50 by 2024. And so I'm gonna take a little bit of time to talk about that with you guys. Pat's suggestion was that I get these out before the meeting, and I was not that well prepared. So, what the title of that goal, actually, I'll go in this direction. And so it's a goal to increase the pace and scale of forest restoration for a couple different reasons that are up here. And so it's about creating resilient landscapes. It's about creating vegetative conditions where fire acts like it did historically, which means more low and moderate intensity fire and less high intensity fire. It's about reducing risk to all of the things on the national forest that we value, and that includes water and watersheds and wildlife and large trees and timber products and all those things we value about the national forest are at risk given those current conditions. And then it's about reducing risk to the communities, infrastructure, and the assets that are adjacent to the forest and on the national forest. And so the title 50/50 is a proposal that we get to 50,000 acres of vegetative treatment a year. And we expect a byproduct of about 50 million board feet out of that as well. And the real key to me on this is not about the numbers, but about the approach that we're proposing to take to get to that goal. And so what we've got is a simple goal statement. as you see, have you got in your hand there. And then we've got underneath that in the bulleted section, a set of what we're calling critical success factors, which mean if we're gonna get to a place where we get to this level of activity and we sustain that, it's because we built this in the right way. And so that's the focus, is what does the right way mean? And so these key factors here summarize what's on your sheet there, down under that bulleted section of what does that mean in terms of getting there the right way. And so the first aspect of that is how we increase involvement of people in the management of their national forest. It's about engaging people in partnerships. It's about working together to get this work done. And so the key is it's about increasing that engagement. The second piece of that is that we have to be thinking and acting at the landscape scale. We can't be thinking about stands. We got to be thinking bigger than that. We have to be working across boundaries. It's all about thinking bigger and operating at the scale fire is. If fire's operating at the landscape scale, we need to be operating at the landscape scale. The other aspect of that is we need to redo the way we do our business. Everything that we do has to be evaluated and rebuilt to be more efficient. We've got a bureaucracy that doesn't not allow us to get to the kind of work we need to be doing, and we need to fix it. And with that comes the caveat that you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so as an example of that, we need to increase our efficiency in terms of our NEPA plan. But that we don't want to lose, and we can't afford to lose, either well-designed integrated projects and public involvement in those projects. And so how do you keep those good aspects while you make the system work faster so that we get more activity on the ground? What was the last one down there? Two others. One is the recognition that the forest does a bunch of other critically important work, and that can't be dropped. We have to continue that other important work for all the other publics and people that utilize the national forest. And so it's how do you do that and keep doing what you're doing there. And then the other one is about that work environment. So how do you create an environment where people have healthy work-life balance, they're appreciated, and not just work harder to get to this goal. And so it's about changes in the system. It's not about asking people to work harder. And so then, this is just as an acknowledgement of just how hard this is going to be. A ton of challenges. That this is not easy. We recognize that. But it really is the sense of urgency, the sense of responsibility, and the critical importance of doing this. That means we have to take this on regardless of how hard it is. And so, the key to me is that last one is that we won't be able to do this by ourselves. This is going to take all of us together in order to be successful at this. We're not fooling ourselves that we can decide to do this and get there. It's only when we do it together that we'll be able to get to this goal. The other one here is we've given ourselves some time to make these changes. So that's where the 2024 comes in. Is if you're going to rebuild the business processes within a bureaucracy, it's going to take some time. So I think that is the last slide I have on 50/50. So I want to take just a little bit more time to talk about that before we move on to our program of work as a forest. So we've developed this goal statement. We're working internally. We've got some discussions going on about what does this mean, what's it going to take, what do we have to do to get here. And then we know that we are moving to a external engagement on this as well. So this is the first time this has come out externally. It made sense to me that this was the group that we first present this to. And so we're looking to see who wants to join us in this. And so it's a broad goal. The specifics, will follow, in terms of strategies and projects. But for me, what this represents is that idea that we have a shared common vision about the situation we've got and what we need to do to address it. And it's not much more than that. So before I jump to program of work, any questions, comments?
So Scott, I can't remember a forest supervisor ever talking to us in this way. And it's encouraging to me to start out with this level of transparency. I appreciate it very much.
And so what we handed out was the goal, and then attached to that is the letter I wrote to the employees of the forest that made the case for why we need to do this and the approach that we need to take to get there. And so I think that, a different level to our publics and to our partners and in terms of that discussion around this goal, but I wanted to give you insight in terms of that, how we roll that out.
In terms of a broad goal. Scott, just for context, maybe you could speak to how big of a goal this is. Do we know how many million board feet are going out off the forest now? Do we know how many acres generally we're getting annually treated? And how we're gonna get from where we are now to this goal?
Yeah, right. And so, a little bit of the context around that is we need to make it about the changes we need to make, not necessarily about the numbers, but we need numbers to set a goal. So, in terms of acres treated, the forest's current goal is generally around 10,000 acres, and we generally achieve somewhere between 12 and 15,000 acres now. So that's a big, it's a 3 to 4 times more than what we're currently doing. On the timber outputs, this year we had a little higher level of timber output, and we offered and awarded 36 million board feet.
And is that largely because of the salvage?
Largely because of the salvage. Generally, our target's been around 25 million, and so we've thought of it generally as a doubling of our commercial timber activity.
But it's not unheard of us actually hitting 50, and then historically, it was actually much higher than that. But in the modern era, we have hit 50 million board feet within our program of work in the past.
It's not as big of a step there as it is on the acre street. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if you can explain how you expect to implement this with your personnel as they are, because we have all this lack of personnel, for instance, to do NEPA. And are you gonna restructure so we have all these strike teams that can work across zones? I mean, what is your plan? Because the way your personnel are now, we're not getting the work done because of that.
But that's exactly right, yeah.
So what do you have planned?
And so, I guess in my mind, 2 key pieces of that. One is we have to redo our business processes internally and how we do our work. That means looking at our NEPA process and figuring out how to do that much faster with much less time and effort, while protecting the resources of the forest and by designing good projects. But we have to fix the way we do our work. And we have to work differently and more with others. So third-party NEPA partnerships, there's great examples around, where the Hat Creek RCD is doing NEPA for the National Forest. We hope to get that here, so expanding our capacity with others. Those are the 2 main thrusts of that.
So one thing I brought up to your predecessor was that perhaps we have this wonderful Harrison Ranger Station. Perhaps we should have more personnel actually out in the forest. If you think about firefighters, they're at the fire station. That's where they sleep and live for a certain few days, and then they go back home. Right now, what I've been told in the past is that, well, everybody's driving, and there's so many miles, hours to come in and out. Maybe you need to stage them here for 2 or 3 days to really get to work first thing in the morning like this, and we're not losing the drive time and the expense on the cars and gas and stuff, and they're getting to work first thing and crack of dawn to the dark of day, and really get them to work, which is kind of the way they used to work. There used to be, what I understand, a lot more personnel out in the forest, and there isn't. Now they're like in their offices. So maybe this is a way, and we have this lovely station, and maybe we could have other sites like that, where they're right in the forest, working from the crack of dawn. Because you're not gonna get it done if you don't start at the crack of dawn anymore.
Yeah, so.
So back to the old stuff.
Yeah, so, you're exactly right about this contraction of the organization and into more, centralized locations than we used to. Used to be more, dispersed and so part of that is, we're getting smaller and smaller as an organization. And so we have less and less people to have out there. And we're centralizing, functions. And so, we'll see us as an organization continue to centralize our business functions in places. This zone concept means we're gonna have more zone employees, less forest employees, that kind of a concept. The call I was on during lunch was, the proposal that we're gonna centralize our budget organization regionally. So, I mean, that's a continuation of the organization. As we lose capacity, as we lose people, how do you maintain, that technical competence but I completely agree with you. I was in Idaho when we combined the Nez Perce and Clearwater National Forest into one. And what we did is we put everybody on the road for half their life. And so how do you think through that in a way that you don't do that? And how do you use camps and, those kinds of locations to get
And let me add that I think if you have people out in the forest, I think you're gonna have the interaction with the local community more, and there'll be more of that respect earned type of thing there, because right now, we hardly see you unless we go visit you. We don't see you out in the forest, and so I think having the personnel in the forest, where we know we can go, you're all working at Harrison, Station, et cetera. Oh, I saw the rangers out there. I mean, people always ask me, do you ever see rangers? I'm like, no. Because I'm out in the forest a lot, and they say, do you ever see anybody? I'm like, well, once in a while, someone passes on the road. But if you get them out here, I think that would also help with that community bond, or maybe even move them around, the camps in different communities like High and Palm, Hayfork and stuff, like the teams, move them around, so that we can all get to know them and work more with them right in the field.
You had one. You wandered around here.
No, I was just wandering around in case there were a bunch of questions to help keep track of who was next.
I'm wondering regarding privatization. I realize you said third-party NEPA, for instance, and working with Watershed Center, which is all these things are good. And I'm just wondering, especially in light of the talking about shrinking, one of the old jokes was the federal government will shrink them down, the Forest Service and the agencies, to where they just write checks from the public treasury to us privatizers. And, which I know that's not what you're suggesting, but, there seems to be some of that direction. And, I personally like the idea of having agencies that have the necessary, specialists, so they can do the good job. And I certainly don't want you to just be check writers. I want you to be, some of the main decision makers. And so, how do you see, privatization and, the public interest working together in, what's happening with the 2020.
So I guess the two things that come to mind is talking to you about, as I listen to that comment, is one about, we're gonna be doing less of the work ourselves. We're gonna be doing more work with others. In many cases, that'll be a partnership. And so, the authorities don't change, and so the example would be third-party NEPA or partnership NEPA, where it still is an agency decision that's made at the end. We're still committed to all of our standards around public involvement and all that, but it's in those cases, it really is working together. And then there's the contracting piece, you know, where we contract the NEPA to a third party, and in that case, it's up to us to just articulate those standards and those expectations and that product that we're looking for to make sure that we're getting that good analysis. And so, it's not about giving it away, it's about getting help in a couple of different ways.
So you're still committed to that aspect of it?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm glad.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think
And
that's.
how to actually do it, too.
Yeah.
Where you do have the necessary personnel, for instance.
Yeah, and, you know, and we're part of smaller government, and we think we're gonna continue to be part of smaller government. Joe?
You know, Scott, probably a couple decades ago, there was a move to go to enterprise teams, to private consulting firms to help with the NEPA. And what we found out was we not only got a lousy job from those that did not work on the forest but came here to do a project, and it cost far more than doing it in-house. I remember when Anna Arnold was here and kind of in charge of the budget, she was telling me that things that they could have done in-house for $25,000, they were paying $80,000 and $100,000 to consulting firms in Sacramento. Sounds to me like you're going in that direction again. Costs more money for a lousy job to go outside the agency to contract that stuff.
You know, I worked through and lived through that exactly what you described, and part of that reality, and not to defend what happened there, it was that we thought we could give it away, and you can't give it away. And so it was like, oh, okay, here, go do that. You know, you just go do that for us. And when that happens, you get a lousy job. And the cost issue is a real one. You know, and so we do pay more in some cases than we would had we had that internal capacity. But that's not always our option to have that.
I gather, from what you said, that the money and resources and responsibilities will be assigned to a zone. And I'm wondering then, what happens? Does a zone have a board of directors? Do the 6 forest supervisors get closed in a room and decide what happens?
Yeah.
We give them boxing gloves.
And so.
Basically, you are the board of directors.
So
Does the region have a role in guiding you or cajoling you or
telling us where to go wrong? Yeah, no, the region always will have a role. We haven't figured out exactly how to work as a zone. We're figuring that out as we speak. I worked in northern Arizona in a situation where it was 4 national forests operating together. And it was a board of directors of the forest supervisors and then me in my position down there. And so, you know, it's gonna be something like a board of directors of the forest supervisors. And I would tell you that the forest supervisors across the Northern California zone are working fabulously together. It's a great group. And I have no concerns about, you know, working with them. It's more work because it's more people and at a higher level.
It's a little scary for local people. I mean, it removes decisions away from us in ways that are a little hard to predict.
Yeah, that's right. I'm no longer in a position, and I'm no longer in a position of being able to make commitments, you know, because we don't have that money in our pocket. And so what I think it does is it, you know, Pat talked earlier about how the partnership between the collaborative and the agencies has been really successful in terms of attracting resources. We're going to be going to a more competitive system internally. And so our ability to attract resources and get the work done here will be because we've got good partnerships and others supporting us. And so it is all about the strength of your team. And that team is not the agency, and it's not just the collaborative and the agency, but it's our elected officials and our industries and, you know,
our detractors, all of us together, what's the strength of that team in terms of our ability to work together and attract resources and funds?
We're gonna need a zonal program of work now.
Yes. Yes.
Prioritize.
Yes. Yes.
Carefully.
Is that, what do you think?
No, absolutely. Yeah, and, you know, you're not alone in having, you know, uncertainty in how we're moving forward. I think there's a little bit of uncertainty between Scott and I and our colleagues on how we're gonna figure it out. But the good thing is we have good relationships. We understand that we are a competitive area of the state because of our partnerships. And I think we're positioned well, but there is some unknown that we're gonna be trying to work through, so. But I do have confidence. We have a good track record, and we have good credibility, and that's gonna help us moving forward.
You know, we have really important work to do.
Yeah.
That'll stack up well. Diane?
So I'm wondering, I guess this is a U.S. Forest Service mandate, is there a similar mandate for the Department of the Interior, and how are you gonna weave that, like the U.S. Fisheries and the wildlife, how is, because they're very necessary to be successful, so how is that intended to be woven together?
So this zone approach is a Region 5, or, you know, the National Forests of California approach that's being taken. So it's just within the agency and just within this region. But what you bring up is really critically important, that in order to get to this goal, working with others includes working with all of our sister agencies and departments to be successful. Because we won't be successful at this unless we've redone our business practices with Fish and Wildlife Service, whether we've established new relationships with the water boards and the air boards, you know, and all gotten on the same page about the work we need to do together. And so we're hoping to use this 50-50 goal and our external release of this as a way to engage in those conversations with those critical partners that have to be with us in order to change the way we do our business.
So this has been mandated to you guys, but not to them yet?
In terms of the zone?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
All the federal agencies are doing something similar. Who's
It's Jerry, Clarence, Diana. So, I am echoing Arnold's description. One of the big concerns, of course, is personal decisions, local decisions are now further removed.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience in various areas is that when regionalization happens, less services, less things happen on the ground in smaller areas, smaller communities. So I guess I want to ask you, what are the concrete benefits to a community like Weaverville, to our forest, from this regionalization? Concrete things you see.
So the concrete benefits are, if we've got a strong team and we put forward good projects, we'll be able to attract more resources than we've been able to in the past.
Because it's greater buying power from the zone?
Yep. And so it's in a competitive system. If you are more competitive, we will get more work done and more resources. If we are less competitive, we'll get less resources and less.
So the increased size makes you more competitive?
What?
The increased size, you know, the bigger zone makes you more competitive to
No,
greater resources?
what I'm suggesting is that within the zone, those, you know, forests and districts and partnerships that are strong and are competitive will get the resources. And so what that means is that, you know, we know we've got a ton of work to do around here together. If we've got a strong team and we're putting good projects forth, the possibility is we'll receive more resources than we've had in the past.
I guess I'm just not understanding the layers of this. So if we have a stronger team locally here in
Yes,
Trinity County,
yes.
we'll get more resources from
the zone.
The zone.
Right, that's right.
And who controls what resources are coming into that zone? Because it sounds like you're having difficulty already, you know, getting
Oh, yeah.
people.
You know, we're not gonna eliminate the challenge if there's not enough money to do everything we need to do.
And so I think maybe part of what Jerry's trying to ask is, as a zone, will you be more competitive in drawing money from the region at overall? Right, is that kind of part of it?
Again, I guess
Is
I'm
a
just
zone
not,
gonna
I'm trying to
have?
understand what the concrete benefits of having the zone is.
So in my mind, the thing I use as a phrase is that people invest in winning teams. And so when you've got a winning team at whatever scale in the system you are, so we've got the Northern California zone working well, we're gonna attract more resources. If we aren't working well as a zone in Northern California, we're gonna lose resources.
So the zone is attracting the resources, and then the resources get, more specifically filtered down to smaller communities to do the work.
Yep,
Is that-
that's right.
So it's-
Yeah, and so what it's doing is gonna put us in a kind of competitive system that you're already used to working within. You know, the Joint Chiefs, the CCI, you know, all of those systems that you're already playing in are competitive systems, and you're doing well at that. This is just telling you that our system internally is gonna get more competitive, and so we need to be better together in order to compete in that system. Is that what you look at it?
So, one thing that I might say to add to that is, there's the potential for higher highs and lower lows, right? So, I think what Scott's getting at is, you know, if we're a functional team here at a local level, thinking of Weaverville specifically, right? And that being an output of the relationship and the team that we have here, right? If we're functional and we're competitive within this new zone system, there is a bigger pot of money for us to be competitive with. If we are not, then the consequences could actually be more drastic. And we could actually lose more because the money that typically would come to us actually goes to wherever those functional teams are in the zone.
So just one last detail, please. So, what you said, each individual forest budget will now be compiled together as a zone budget.
Yes.
And that's the larger pot of money that stronger community teams can try and access.
So Clarence, Diana, Larry, Joseph, Susan, you guys remember.
So Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, the fire season that we're just winding up was the last one that fire borrowing applies to. And next year, there won't be a need for fire borrowing because the legislation causes those huge fires suppression costs to be funded out of another pot. Am I right on that?
Yes, except for the idea that fire borrowing will go away. So what they've done is they've set aside a large amount of money where the federal government can access those for costs associated with large fires. And so each agency sets up their budget for fire. When they run out of that, they're able to tap into this larger pot of money for fire suppression costs. When that pot is gone, we're back to fire borrowing with each agency. So fire borrowing didn't go away for good. It's just the likelihood of us needing to do that is much reduced. We don't have any idea how that larger amount of money set aside is gonna be accessed and spent, and whether we're gonna run through that and still need more. But on the other side of that large pot of money that Congress set aside is fire borrowing.
Okay, well then my question is, basically, would you see that the forests have a significantly better chance of actually implementing programs because of this legislation that directs fire suppression costs towards that other pot of money?
So, initially when the discussions around, the fire funding fix, were talked about, there was the, expectation that would mean more money for us to do more work. It's not turned out that way. The fire borrowing was being done against some permanent trust funds and other funds within the agency that really wasn't taking away our local money too much. And so, that fire funding fixes, doesn't mean we got a bunch more money.
That's an interesting comment, because my recollection is we've heard a number of times that things didn't get done because of firepower.
Yeah.
So that'd be interesting to know more about how that's all worked.
We could dig into that further.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Diana.
Come on.
So, I'm gonna talk plain, and, it seems to me that, there's a lot of, I mean, you talk about zones, you talk about regions, you talk about agencies. Where is the, people that live in those places in this plan? And it sounds like it's not there, and it's always best to, keep things local and not scatter them out too far, because, too many involvement,